Yes, thanks again. So I'm Danny from Cyberduck, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to build a compelling brand system. So just a bit about us. So we're a digital agency. We've been trusted by clients for over 11 years now, helping with digital transformation, brand strategy, user experience, web application development, and as Hayley mentioned before, we've got clients like University of London who are here, Mitsubishi Electric, Cancer Research Technology. So some of our clients are here to see us, which is great. And yeah, just to sort of introduce the talk. So today I'm going to be presenting some vignettes, some inspirational case studies about how some brands are doing it really well at the moment, and the core tenets that you can apply to your organizations today, whether you're B2B or B2C. Anyone remember this logo? So actually it came out in 2007, and hands up if you liked it back in the day. Vibrant, edgy. Hands up if you like it now. Okay, a few more hands. I mean, has it stood the test of time? I don't know. I mean, when I was showing this logo to people and asking them, you know, what does this logo mean? What does it say? Very few people could understand. Does it represent London as a city? I don't know, but take your own views on that one. And then compare it to this logo, which was announced sort of 5 years ago, obviously used in the 2016 games. And this particular device is quite sort of deeply rooted in Brazil, with its aim to sort of transform not only a city, but a whole country. And the challenge that these guys had when they designed the logo, an agency called Tator, back in Rio, was they wanted to represent the youth, you know, the spirit of change. And if you look at the device, it's quite clever. So you have like the different ethnicities, the different colors from the nature that you have in Brazil, the sea, the forest, the sun, and also a nod to the very famous mountain in Rio as well, Sugarloaf Mountain, kind of makes me want to go there. But yeah, sort of quite deeply rooted. And if you look at another brand that does this very well, so they're sort of taking their kind of brand and their meaning and taking it sort of to really the next level, it's Google. What some of you may not realize, that if you go to the Google homepage and sort of tap or click on the About Us button, you get straight through to their mission statement. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And that was their mission statement from day one. And that's kind of sort of very empowering, isn't it? Very clear. Further, if you scroll down that page, when Google first started, they came up with 10 things that they know to be true. Things like focus on the user and all else will follow. It's best to do one thing really, really well. And one of my favorites, you can be serious without wearing a suit. And obviously it's a nod towards their culture, isn't it? And all of these things, you know, when brands have these kind of values or principles behind them, it does the following. It helps people focus so they can really do best at their jobs. And it gives them the clarity to make a lot of different decisions in the organization. Google's a brand that doesn't satisfy itself in just iterating or the evolution side of things. It wants to revolutionize, and they're never sort of happy with where they are. And they've come up with a number of different new technologies, like drones that deliver sort of products, driverless cars, and contact lenses that can sense diabetes and glucose, as well as acquiring the Nest ecosystem, which is like connected home. So it's a far shout from where they were originally, which is organizing the world's information, right? Definitely moved away from that. So what did they do? So a year ago, they came up with a parent brand called Alphabet. Not sure if any of you. Hands up if you've heard of that. So quite a few of you. And what Alphabet allows Google to do now is to really focus on all of their business units. So you've got things like Fiber, which is super fast broadband, Nest, Google Ventures, which is venture capitalist, of course. And the interesting thing about all of this is 2 weeks after Google PLC, Alphabet kind of emerged as a PLC company, it was the world's most valuable public listed company ever. And at the same time, sort of when that happened, Yahoo decided to sell their core business. And I think what's important to say here is that a robust sort of brand architecture really empowers people. It provides management scale and lets business units sort of run independently. So within the Google or Alphabet group now, Google Search is pretty much running independently. So you have all of these business units. They're empowered to make their own decisions and do what's best for them, and they have their own principles and their own kind of values that they adhere to. This is the Yahoo that I used to love and really cherish. What I used to like about that is it was a really simple page that just allowed me to explore the web. By 2001, Yahoo had over 400 products, and that was when Google was sort of really starting to perfect their search engine. And one of the main things they were focusing on in 2001 was an astrology hotline where you have to pay $15 a minute to talk to someone. So, yeah. If you try and find Yahoo's mission statement on their website, you can't actually find it. There is a video that plays here as well, but I had to actually go into Google to find Yahoo's mission statement. And obviously, make what you want of this one. But it's, over the last 24 years, Google have changed their mission statement and boilerplate. Yahoo have changed their boilerplate and mission statement 24 times. So clearly there's an identity crisis. And obviously, as you know now, Yahoo have been bought by Verizon. In 2013, Marissa Mayer introduced a new logo that you can see over there. She said that the logo is whimsical, sophisticated, but it didn't really have any deep-rooted meaning. It didn't tie into any strategic objectives. They just sort of revealed a new logo, which is in the top left corner there. So it didn't really do anything to them as a brand. It didn't reflect their new brand vision or anything like that at all. And at the same time, Yahoo exec team had a sort of a management conference, and they brought in a consultant and asked them to describe different businesses in one word. So what sort of one word would you describe different businesses as? And they asked them to describe Google in one word. People said search. Everyone said search. Then they were asked to describe eBay, and they said auction. And when they were asked to describe Yahoo, they said entertainment, they said news, they said mail. So it wasn't really clear what it was that they did. So let's sort of talk a bit more now about what's happening in the space and what some fantastic brands are doing. Anyone here heard of the Mast brothers before? So these guys are chocolatiers. If you're a hipster from Shoreditch, you'll hear of them. Or a hipster from Soho in New York. But basically, they use something called Storyframing to build sort of an overarching narrative around their brand. And they say, we're from the 18th century, we travel around the world in a wooden sailboat to foreign lands to find the best cocoa that you can get. And we bring the cocoa back, and we make our chocolates by hand and wrap everything up for you. Is that a bit far-fetched, over the top? I guess it is, but build your own stories in your head, and you've all of a sudden stunning to develop a brand over there. So customers are definitely focused on meaning. They want narratives, they want to make up their own stories based on an overarching narrative that you provide. And smart brands also use infrastructure. So in 2001, the sales of Guinness beer in Dublin were dropping by 3%. So they kind of felt a bit out of touch with, Guinness felt a bit out of touch with the Generation Y. And they needed to come up with a new way to engage and talk to these audiences. So they took one of their breweries, the Storehouse, and they, with architects and designers, they turned it into a theatrical, musical, and cultural centre, and they ran a series of events, inviting thousands of people over those few weeks, and they got celebrities like Tom Cruise down there, and they found a new way to really engage with audiences. And now the Guinness Storehouse is actually the most visited tourist attraction in Dublin. And that's a fantastic way of kind of using physical infrastructure. And you can use digital infrastructure as well to get in touch with different generations. Here's an example. So Cyberduck, at our office in Farringdon, if you walk past our office, you can see a huge physical duck in the window, and you can use a web app basically to change the colours, save your logo, and actually tweet about it. And we know every time somebody creates their own version of our logo, we know about it. We get notifications. And this kind of leads me to the next point, where we've moved away from brands marketing products to products marketing brands. It's a very modern way now of doing marketing. And it doesn't only have to be like citing digital agencies or B2C sort of focused beverage companies. I mean, even our own government is sort of really taking their brand to the next level with gov.uk, and they've created exemplars and pillars basically to underpin all of the government departments. So they started, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago now, but they got a team to build a design language and libraries that other, in terms of how to write copy, how to write pages, how to create buttons, how to create links, a graphical language that people can use now. So the DVLA, HMRC, Department of Work and Pensions, they all can use these libraries now to quickly create websites and bring everything together. And they're saving a lot of money by doing that, actually, because they've minimised the amount of people now that do things on the phone. And this particular screenshot is Citizen Safe, which is one of our clients, where we created a brand for them, and actually they allow people to verify themselves now and sort of submit their tax returns through sort of a clever verification system. So they're sort of expanding their brand through partnerships, and the results are fantastic. There's sort of 1 million users now. You can't really see the screenshot here, but 1 million users a year now are using the self-assessment feature on that website. 94% of people are filing patents online. In the past, they did it by post and sort of various agents. And there's a lot of other stats as well to prove how successful they've been on building this sort of gov.uk brand. And when you're sort of in the business of building products, you don't find customers for your products. You find products for your customers, and this is a great quote by Seth Godin. So let's talk a bit more about how we do this and what the sort of tenets or pillars are. But before we do, I just wanted to share a holiday photo with you, just to sort of remind you of some of the don'ts. So these are segways, and they were supposed to, in 2001, transform the automotive industry and become the new vehicle. I don't really see a lot of them out the window now. And their original objective was to sell 10,000 segways every week. Guess how many segways they sold in 5 years? 24,000. So they didn't really kind of succeed, and they had massive marketing, advertising budgets behind them. And the reason why they didn't succeed is because their marketing approach and the design approach was too broad. They were trying to target everyone instead of focusing on particular personas, you know, like tourist guides, getting the regulators involved to talk about local laws, you know, whether they can transport these things on the road or not. So they didn't really do their research. So let's talk a bit more about the brand system. So we're starting with the first pillar or tenet, which is personality. A brand needs an essence, it needs a strong narrative behind it, and a modern brand today needs to be integrative to create that innovative factor. And this is an example here of Slack. So let's start, who hasn't heard of Slack? Okay, there's one hand in the room. I'm really happy, two hands. So you all know Slack. And basically their kind of mission statement was to create channels and not emails. Yeah? And because of that, you know, because of this sort of very strong essence, which is very simple, they weren't a new chat, they were a new chat room. And they basically, there were others out there, but their whole personality was about openness, where you can integrate other tools into Slack. And you can take things from Slack and integrate them into other tools. And this is an example here where that logo sort of, you saw, the Cyberlight logo, notifications, every time somebody creates a new version of the logo, you can see it coming up through a bot into Slack. And it's that sort of open culture that they created that has really made them so successful. And then there's another sort of bot there that's showing kind of an error message, and it's that sort of mentality that's really made them, plus a sort of very sort of freemium model as well, that's made them so successful. Songkick is another fantastic example, and their mission statement was, you know, if you haven't heard of Songkick before, it's a place where you can follow artists and sort of buy tickets now for concerts, but their mission statement was an excellent, a concert will transform your life. So that's kind of what they said in the early days. And again, they've got this sort of very integrative personality where you can import or export your favorite musicians from Spotify and bring them into the Songkick website. And you can also then, if you're an artist, you can then pull all of the data of all your tours and put them on your website. It kind of works two ways, and it's a really clever kind of system that they've developed, and clever brand as well. Yeah, and then TED. So TED, if you want to go to a proper TED conference, it costs about £5,000 to go to a TED conference. Yeah, I mean, in 2006, Chris Anderson realised that actually, you know, got a great. Chris Anderson is the founder of TED. He realised that it's a great business model, but he wasn't satisfied, and he wanted to take a bit of a risk and say, okay, actually, let's put all our videos online. Today, they have 1 million videos being viewed across a variety of devices, from PlayStations to iPads to smart TVs, Apple TV, the responsive web. But that wasn't enough. They decided they came up with an idea because they wanted to cultivate the brand further. They wanted to give away kind of almost the brand to other people to create something called TEDx events. So what TEDx is it allows any institutes, whether you're a university or college, you can create something called TED in a box. You can create your own TED event. You know, for example, here, this is a screen that shows you how to do that. And because they gave away so much control, they added about 25,000 TEDx talks were added, and they managed to get into another 133 countries through this kind of fantastic model. Really interesting in terms of what they've done. And actually, from a risk management perspective, you know, things can go wrong, because if you're giving away control to create an event. But they built such great manuals and guides on how to run your own TEDx events that there were only a dozen problems across all of those tens of thousands of events. So it's a really good example. The second sort of tenet I want to talk about is behaviour. So Virgin America again, quite similar to what gov.uk did. They created digital-first design guidelines or design libraries. So the whole, so instead of like coming up with a brand identity and then creating branding guidelines or sort of creating letterheads and stuff like that, they kind of went in the other way around. They decided to create what's called a single web page application, which is all of the interfaces to book a flight, from selecting the destinations to selecting dates, all the way to finding your seats on the plane and then paying. Everything happens on one page, and they've cut down the booking process by 50%. They've also completely eliminated photography from their website, and they only use illustrations now. And it's been hailed by Wired magazine as the first radical rethink of flight booking in a decade. So it's pretty fantastic achievements. As well as that, they also had to change all of the processes that happen behind the scenes, including legal processes. So it's a proper digital transformation project. It's not only what you see, it's everything behind the scenes as well as part of the sort of the new brand behavior that they came up with. And then they applied that kind of identity design to other channels as well. Another example is of sort of brand behavior and differentiation is Uber, where they took the old logo and actually they realized that they no longer want to be everyone's sort of private driver. They actually want to transport goods. They want to differentiate themselves in different countries. So they came up with quite a clever sort of material design concept where the icons, the app, everything changes depending on the country that you're in. So for example, in Asia, the colors are more red in certain countries. Again, a very clever system. And then the IMI. So the IMI, the Institute of the Motor Industry. And it's a fantastic example of where they represent the professionals that work in the retail motor industry, and they needed to come up with a new brand. So Cyberduck worked with them together to audit, rationalize, and look at all the different sub-brands that they had, products and services, and come up with a new identity, a new brand system. But what's interesting about this project is the way it was done, where the agency and the IMI decided to talk to the personas throughout the design process and validate decisions, both with the real sort of personas, you know, a number of different ones, and the stakeholders as well. So constantly validating your design decisions as you go along is really important, whether it's done sort of on the web, offline, or both. The third tenet is communication, where smart brands now bake in social connectivity to drive sort of growth hacking, which means not necessarily spending a lot of money on advertising, having a ubiquitous presence, or sort of a cross-channel approach, linking the digital and the physical world together. So this example here is Warby Parker. They're basically a eyewear company. So if you want to get try on sort of new style of glasses, you can order the frames online, free of charge. You get 10 samples in the post from their website. And you can then try on those frames, take a photo or selfie of yourself, put it onto social media, Warby Home Try On, and then their consultants or fashion experts will help you, in a very entertaining way, select the best possible frame. So, really kind of fantastic example of sort of a brand that converses across different channels and sort of brings everything together. And obviously it's a very competitive market, and this particular brand has gone from no one to one of the biggest players in the US today. And another good example is Nespresso. And it took them decades to really, you probably don't know this, but they've been around for forever. It took them decades to really succeed, and what they did is they iterated and experimented with different channels in terms of their marketing. So they and their real breakthrough was actually, interestingly, when they got the Nespresso machines onto first class and business class airlines. And that's kind of where they managed to get in front of the right audience. And then they decided to experiment with print versus TV, and they found that by demonstrating the machine and showing how easy it is in a video, the sales increased several fold compared to what they were spending on print. They then trialed department stores and managed to get into one in Paris, and they found that when they have tasters, you know, when they let people taste the coffee, they can increase sales by 6 times over. They then introduced clever things like the Capsule Brigade, which is a free service where they send you envelopes in the post, and then free of charge you can send them your capsules to recycle them. And of course the Nespresso Club, which now has millions of users, you know, you can download apps, you can go onto the website to order capsules. One of my favourite examples is MailChimp. So whilst their competitors are spending a lot of money on advertising, MailChimp are doing something a lot more entertaining. They're creating websites called Cats for Hats as a joke, but these jokes are turning into real business solutions, which are generating a lot of money for them, where they have a company in Thailand making Cats for Hats, so taking their mascot, Freddy, who's a monkey, and basically turning it into fashion sort of items for pets. Further to that, you know, in terms of communication and collaboration, they're building websites called Voice and Tone, which is aimed at copywriters or content producers, and websites for lawyers, teaching lawyers how to speak to end users in plain English and cut down terms and conditions from 5 pages to 1 page. So they're kind of creating these microsites for all of the key users that they have to sort of educate and sort of do a lot of humorous things. And there's a whole culture behind these Freddy hats. It's just fantastic in terms of what they've done. So just some sort of takeaways. We've seen examples of how you can build a distinct personality sort of using narrative. I mean, the Mass Brothers is a really good example. And sort of companies like Guinness and Cyberduck have built sort of brands that are integrative, you know, and modern sort of brands like Virgin Atlantic and Gov.uk are building design systems and design languages, and removing obstacles, empowering teams to create websites quickly through sort of libraries. And then disruptive brands like Warby Parker are basically using really innovative communication across different channels, connecting social media to the physical world, whilst being extremely user-centric as well. And I'd just like to finish on one quote that I really like. So customers don't buy brands, they actually join brands. Thank you very much, and these slides will be available online for you to see.
Don't leave, because we're moving to the Q&A section. We have a couple of questions to you, Danny. So one question was, so thank you first of all for this very insightful talk. I learned a lot, especially about Belgium. I'm going to Google that. Cats with hats. Or cats with hats. So first question is, how do I start with a brand strategy? If I'm, let's say, a startup and I want to create a new product, where do I start? And ticking all of these boxes.
So yeah, I mean, I think to start, it depends on the type of organisation you are and where you are in the journey. I think if you're sort of a big corporate or sort of a substantial business, you have to start sort of by doing brand audits to find out what sort of messages have you got, what sort of tone of voice you have, how the sort of the current logo and brand is being perceived. So you need to do sort of research, qualitative research, that is, into the users and into the sort of material that you have. And then sort of looking at the high level of sort of whether, you know, there are sub-brands and whether you should be a branded house or a house of brands, you know, like Unilever. So certain organisations like Unilever do very well as a house of brands. And I guess kind of Google has now moved in that direction. And certain brands like FedEx are much more integrated, or Virgin as well, where you always have kind of the Virgin identity. So it depends on the brand architecture that you you have or don't have, whether you actually need it in the first place. There's a lot of kind of things to really consider. I think if you're a startup, it's a lot easier. It really is a lot easier.
Great, thanks. And the second question, I actually don't understand myself, but maybe you can. Why are design languages better than branding guidelines? Maybe you can clarify actually for me and maybe the audience, what are design languages in the first place?
So a design language is kind of like a digital style guide, which includes things like buttons, examples of how to lay out content, and principles for things like tone of voice. They're much more kind of tactical and aimed at the digital world that we all live in today. Whereas branding guidelines are more, I guess, print orientated. So if you look at like what gov.uk did, they came up with sort of bootstraps, and that even includes like code you can quickly take and pull and put onto different websites. So you don't have to kind of reinvent or sort of produce code every single time. You just take those assets that have been created. And the beautiful thing about this, and what gov.uk do, is they're constantly reinventing those their sort of design language and style guides and bootstraps to kind of, so the teams can always pull the latest version and use that across the board.
Fantastic. Just want to be, is there any question in the audience that hasn't been tweeted? It's your chance to ask any. Otherwise, we're moving on to the next speaker, and he will be obviously around afterwards in the networking. Oh, there's one. Yes?
I went to a cyber event, I think 1 or 2 years ago, and I think the logo was different at the time, the whole brand.
Yes.
So my question is, why and how did you do this process?
Yeah, so I'm glad that somebody noticed. Yeah, we launched the new logo about a year and sort of 3 months ago now, and I think we felt, that the logo, the old logo, whilst it worked very well for us, we felt that it was a bit tired. One of the things, a lot of new font systems came out. We wanted something a bit more representative of who we were, because I guess, similar to Yahoo, we wanted a logo that sort of really tied into our strategic objectives as a business, which changed from when we first started CyberDuck. So, and also sort of implementation across mobile was more and more problematic. With our new logo, for example, we don't even need to use images. We can just draw it using things like CSS. It's a lot more versatile for us as a business. And yeah, there were a number of reasons, but that's probably the main one. It wasn't representative of who we were and what we transformed into.
The last question.
This one on that, do you think that the BEHAVIOUR brand, is a second journey, or do you think that is just down to what
Yeah, so I think it's a really important point, because the personas or the audiences that we were talking to 11 years ago are very different to the audiences we speak to today. So that's a fantastic point. I mean, I think when we first started, we were working a lot more with founders and sort of CEOs, whereas today we're working with CMOs and kind of project managers and technical people, and their requirements are slightly different, and even in terms of the demographic and age group is slightly different as well. So yes, that was a big consideration, and when we created our new brand, we did all the research around that. To make sure that we even tested the logo with real clients, and for me it was a very emotional experience departing from the old logo, which I didn't expect it to be so difficult, but yeah, I managed to overcome those emotions.